Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's mix in another Skinwalkers encounter, one that was just posted a couple of days back on the reddit.com website there on the subreddit called Skinwalkers. Once again, I'm just going to focus on one entry here, but it's almost like a bonus because it has two stories associated with encounters, and then I'll give my own thoughts and opinions on that here. It seems like more people are liking just focusing on a single entry for these encounters, and I think it makes more sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue doing that, at least for the time being. But this one comes from a user by the name of Caleb_949, and they titled it "A Skinwalker-like Creature, My Friend's Story Plus My Story." So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating stuff that this person encountered, both for themselves and their friend. And again, I'll give my thoughts and opinions after each one. So here's essentially what they stated. So I don't know how to read it very well, and I apologize about this, but I'm going to try to share my story of what I believe may be a skinwalker encounter I had, and a story my friend who lived on the land has. If these don't sound like them, then please let me know so that I can post this in the correct subreddit. And then they added a small little edit. And to add some more context on the location, this was deep in the backwoods of northern Louisiana. Closest town to where we were was about 15 to 20 miles. And so here's the first entry that he calls the buddy's story. So northern Louisiana, so I used to go to a buddy's house located in the edge of some marshy woods all the time when I got off on weekends, and we would go hunting and frogging out on his land pretty regularly. He constantly talked about weird sounds and a weird deer/large dog looking thing that he would sometimes see while in his deer stand, or at least walking to or from it. I'm pretty skeptical about anything like that because I generally thought he was just trying to create something to talk about, because he used to get pretty ridiculously jumpy whenever we would hear noises going through the woods early in the morning or nighttime. And he would tell me he would hear his name being called outside and sometimes hear his own voice. He explained to me one time that he was headed back from his stand one night and a deer/dog looking thing ran right at him in a crazy fast manner from roughly 100 meters away. He carries a sidearm just in case for a black bear or other type of bobcats encounter, so he pulled it out and unloaded roughly 15 rounds of 9mm into the animal, which then proceeded to then change paths and run away. He went to track it, and the blood trail stopped abruptly, and he said ever since then he has been on high alert at nighttime and early morning time. And that's essentially it. That's everything associated with Buddy's story. First, this is the first encounter that happens, it looks like, there in Louisiana. One of the first ones that I've encountered that I've mentioned here on this channel. I'm always frustrated, though, why people don't just mention the actual town itself. It seems like every single encounter doesn't really go into details as to the location, like deep details. Like if I was mentioning something was happening in Austin, I would say Austin. I wouldn't say somewhere in central Texas, if you know what I mean. So those of you there in northern Louisiana, if you know any particulars about those backwoods areas or the towns closest around that area, maybe you'll provide some context. But here in this case, he was out there doing his usual hunting. Someone let me know what frogging is, by the way. I don't have any idea of indication of what that might be, at least up front. But as it happened on that fateful night, that's when, besides hearing very creepily his name called out and called out in his own voice, that would be enough for me. I would be gone at that point. If I hear somebody calling my name and I'm in the middle of nowhere and no one is around me and it's in my own voice, I'm gone. And then all of a sudden he sees this deer/dog looking thing run right at him, right there in the middle of the night, coming crazy fast from 100 meters away. That would be enough for me never to go out there again. But also, he pulled out that gun, shot 15 rounds into it. It survived and then went away, and he was not able to track it. It gives me the idea that this guy would at least have been able to do some good tracking, right? Like, you gotta give him at least that due diligence. He's an expert hunter, so he probably would have easily found what this thing was and where it went. But the fact that it couldn't, again, points to it being just something else differently altogether, maybe even a skinwalker, and so on. So again, that's at least Buddy's story. Now I'm going to go ahead and post and talk about the main user story, and here's what he says. So after hearing his story, it sounded pretty unbelievable, so obviously as a skeptic, I didn't believe him. So I had no fear of his woods aside from bobcats, but I also carry a self-defense sidearm for predators as well, so I felt pretty confident. This one day, he offers to stand up because he was working late one night and his brothers were both wanting to go hunting as well. So we all loaded our firearms up and then took our stands, and they were all spread apart on the land. I climb into my own buddy's stand, waited out, and just sit in peace waiting on a deer. As I'm sitting, time passes by pretty normally, but around sunset it gets dead silent where I'm at. I didn't think anything of it. I just assumed it was because I was zoned out waiting on some dinner, and so I waited for as long as there was sunlight. Sun was almost down, and I was about to get ready to pack up when I saw a deer. I didn't get a good look at its head to see if it was a buck or a doe, but I had tags for both. So I was fine either way, and I raised my .30-06, sighted in its heart, and then pulled the trigger. Well, I blinked when I shot, and when I blinked, the deer was suddenly gone. I strapped up my rifle, climbed down, and my friend's brother called me and said they heard me shoot and made it up to me to help track the deer. And so we found blood, a good bit of it, and then we started to track it, and we tracked it roughly 100 to 200 meters, and then the trail literally vanished. No leaves rustling afterward, no blood, no more broken sticks or disturbed foliage. We searched for the trail almost 2 hours until all we got was a dreadful feeling that something was watching us. I haven't really ever experienced a feeling like this before, and I did not like it. And the moment brother number one mentioned he felt uneasy, we all decided to admit defeat and then walked over to the house. This was then the last time I was out there hunting because my buddy's family moved shortly after for a larger house. I know being in Louisiana is probably not a skinwalker, so I understand that, but it sounds like it from what he and I describe. From Google, I see the Rougarou comes up, but I assumed this was just Cajun folklore. This stuff happened roughly 8 years ago, and I just found out about this subreddit, so I decided to share and see what people think it possibly is. And that's it. That's everything essentially that his story, the main user story, was. So again, continuing on the fact that it's that same land that his buddy was at. He was there on the same area, probably, and he's, as you said, using the same stand, probably in the same location too, this time accompanied by his friends, those brothers, in other words, and they were there and they came across a deer. And then in a split second, and literally the blink of an eye, when he shot that deer, it disappeared. It was not there any longer. It moved incredibly fast, obviously faster than anything that a deer should. And once again, just like his buddy, whenever they tried to track it, and him being a hunter and no doubt trying to track it expertly, 100 to 200 meters out, the trail just suddenly vanished, just like it happened with his buddy. They would have heard something, they would have seen something, but they didn't. This was during the evening time too. As he stated earlier, this was just before the sun went down. So there was still some sunlight out there. They would have easily been able to see something, but whatever this thing was, if it was mimicking a deer, it easily went in the blink of a second off into the distance, far away from anywhere else. And ironically, they were out there hunting, and then now they were getting that dreadful feeling, as they called it, that uneasy feeling like they in turn were being watched and hunted. Kind of interesting, right? Kind of almost poetic when it comes to that. It's almost like that movie, The Predator, when you have all those guys out there who are all badasses, but all of a sudden, when the predator comes along, all of a sudden they're the hunted ones. It was interesting that this was happening to them. Very wise that they decided to get out of there. And then, of course, that ended up being the last time that this guy was there, too. Interesting, too, that he mentioned the Rougarou. I just covered that the other day here on my channel. So what a strange coincidence when it comes to that. It is something to talk about, whether it's truly that type of cryptid, some other cryptid, and not a skinwalker in of itself. But we shall see, because as I've as I've mentioned now in some of these other encounters with the skinwalkers, they have happened across multiple parts of the U.S., a new location coming up practically every single new video, and I was totally unassuming that it would ever be here in Texas, but I've talked about several situations of that already. So the fact that this is here in Louisiana should not be a surprise either. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with this user's encounter. The title again, Skinwalker-like creature, my friend's story plus my story. Let me know what you guys think. Post those comments below. Those of you that live in the Louisiana area, if you know more skinwalker lore associated out there, I'd love to hear what the local side has to say about that too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.